Hey everyone, it's Jeremy. Welcome back to Bozmos2, where we are playing Chaco. This is our Pretender design video. What we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at some of the Pretender options that are available for Chaco. Kind of talk about the overall concept of, what I have tested out for Chaco, what kind of works, what I've seen doesn't really work, etc. And then go through a couple of mock-up Pretender designs that I thought about utilizing, and then which one I actually ended up using. And yeah, we'll go from there. So let's jump into it. Caveat, as always, I'm a casual player, so I'm gonna miss things, and this is all gonna be heavily opinion based, so keep that in mind. All right, let's jump into it. So the first thing that we're gonna see when we jump into Chaco's Pretender options is that, unfortunately, comparatively for like DE and especially for Bozmod, because Bozmod has a lot of new cool Pretender chassis. And even so does DE, right? DE has a lot of cool Pretender chassis. Chaco doesn't get a lot, unfortunately. Chaco gets some specific things to Chaco, i.e. they get this line of Wuyas, but they're not especially unique or really like cost effective. They are still Titan chassis. And their cost is kind of rough for what they offer. There are some interesting things in here, but there's nothing in here that's just like, oh wow, this is cool, I really want to incorporate it into my build. At least there's nothing that I have found, right? They're basically just rehashed versions of all the other Titan chassis, and then they also do get the kind of like the Native American or indigenous, Australian indigenous, kind of like Titan chassis as well, that are cool again, but that, like most Titan chassis, don't really have a whole lot of crazy, interesting, cool things. They can be made to do some kick-ass stuff, right? If you're going for a particular build. But otherwise, they're just kind of very generic. And then the thing that's kind of unfortunate compared to a lot of other DE nations, or especially a lot of Bozmod nations, is there's not a lot of really super cool Awake expanders. Like Bozmod introduces a whole lot of dragons and really cool fucking badass chassis, and there's not really a lot of that for Chaco, unfortunately. So let's talk about some of the things that are interesting. We're just going to use the monolith as kind of an example. What is good for Chaco? What is important for Chaco? And I probably should have spent more time talking about this during the nation overview, but I kind of got involved in really going through descriptions on all the different units and etc. I didn't really talk a lot about what they do, so we'll talk about that here, right? Chaco has a problem having very crappy basic inventory, right? Which means they have massive problems expanding. They are extremely reliant on their sacreds, which are very, very expensive to expand, right? You got to think, when you start turn 1, you only have 400 gold. And it's 90 a pop for a Katsina, right? And you're thinking, okay, well, that's fine, right? But it's 90 a pop for a Katsina, and then you have to think about who leads those Katsina, because they're magic beings, right? You can't lead them with a village elder, right? Even if he's your prophet, unless you put like magic leadership on there, right? So to get that done, you have to like summon a Choco and Star Priest. That's 70 of your 400 gold, and he can only leave 5 Katsina warriors. So you got to be really careful with your money if you're going to be expanding with Katsina warriors, And honestly, if you're not expanding with Katsina warriors, you have to resign yourself to having low expansion, because you can't expand with the rest of your infantry, with Choco and elites or armored. Even if you mass them, even if you go full scales and you have a crap ton of money and you mass the shit out of them, they are going to die in droves, just crazy droves, which means you have three options basically. You have to either go like full scales basically, and you have to try to afford every turn little 5 squads of your Katsina warriors, blessed up by like a Choco and Star Priest, or Sun Priest rather, because the Star Priests don't have priest levels, so they can't do it, and neither do the Bozmos2, so you're stuck making Choco and Star Priests, which are your worst mage for a while, right? Until you kind of get through expansion. Because if you stop to make a Mon Katsina or a Wuya, those take 2 turns. So it means your expansion is being delayed. Also, 5 Katsina are very strong, but if you're doing a full scales scenario and they don't have a real bless or anything like that, they can take chip damage and they can die, right? They have good HP, but they have very low protection. Invulnerability helps, right? But basically, if things start to get through that Vine Shield, they can die, and your Choco and Star Priest or Sun Priest absolutely can die. A straight arrow will kill these guys, getting wrapped around will kill these guys. So even in that scenario, your expansion is not strong, okay? So the other alternative is you can do scales and try to rely on pumping out sacreds, or you can do a heavy bless and pump out sacreds. And with that, right, like go for a scenario where you're doing a couple of Katsina warriors and then like a Mon Katsina, or a couple of Katsina warriors and a Sun Priest, or whatever you need, right? Or Choco and Star Priest, right? If you have a way to bless your Katsina warriors, you can use Star Priests to get them out there. So if you prophetize, right, like a Kikmungwi as your starting commander, if you prophetize him and then use some Katsina warriors and carry them around with Star Priests while you have the prophet bless them, then that can work. And if you have a heavy bless, then the Katsina warriors are very strong. Again, you get into that scenario, though, of if you run into things... So your Katsina warriors with a bless, 5 of them can fight 30 knights, right? 5 of them can take on 50 barbarians. They'll kill the shit out of those barbarians. But the problem is your commander will die to those things. So unless you have someone like a Mon Katsina or a Wuya out there leading them, you have to be very careful what you attack, because your commander will get killed while your Katsinas are basically invulnerable with a good bless, right? So that's a thing to keep in mind. And it matters because that means your Mon Katsinas or your Wuyas, again, very expensive and slow to recruit. So your expansion is stymied. And then the third option is the Awake Expander, right? Like somewhere in between with an Awake Expander. And the Awake Expander is going to allow you, depending on what you do, depending on what type of bless you go, is going to allow you to take a bless that benefits both the Awake Expander and your Katsina, and then you'll have a decent scenario where you can expand well, but you're probably going to have shit scales. So the first one is great scales, but you're resigning yourself to crappy expansion. The second one is in the middle, right? You can have a good bless and decent scales, but you might have crap expansion, might have okay expansion. And then you have the Awake Expander, decent bless, probably going to have shit scales, but you're probably going to have really good expansion, right? So that's kind of the scenario that we come to, okay? With that said, you do have additional bless points for Earth and for Nature, right? They get a bonus 1 Earth, bonus 1 Nature. And this is cool but it's also kind of unfortunate and kind of pigeonholes you, right? Because it means you want to take advantage of these to get those points, but it also means investing in Earth and nature when Earth and nature is already your strongest path, right? So it means investing in the thing that you already have a lot of, which is kind of shit for diversity. But at the same time, investing in... I'm gonna turn on 3 for everything so we can look at, you know, relatively... we can look at different options, basically. Going Earth and going nature can get you a lot of really good stuff for all of your sacreds, right? Getting fire and shock resistance is great for all of your sacreds. Very, very good resistance option in the late game, or even in the mid game, right? Additional strength on your Katsina makes them kill like fucking crazy. Getting reinvigoration can be really nice on all of your sacreds, not just your Katsina, but also like your Chocoan Star Priests, right? Giving them a little bit of additional reinvigoration so that their communions are a little bit better, etc. That's pretty nice. Down in nature, obviously poison resistance can be a really big deal for a lot of different matchups, but getting into things like Berserker can be really, really strong for your Katsinas. It can kind of be a bit of a double-edged sword for your Chocoan Star Priests, or your Communions, basically, or your Wuyas, depending on the situation. So it's a little dicey, right? But it means that your Katsina, who are going to be probably a pretty big bolt, also like your Ogres and things like that, are all really hard to deal with, generally speaking. Or you can go things like Regeneration is always strong, but again, Regeneration is something that you can do in the mid to late game. Same with Barkskin, right? That's going to give you a little bit of a boost on some of your Sacreds, but it's not very useful on like your Katsina, because most of your Katsina have invulnerability, right? It's of some use still, etc. But so you there's this incentive to go for Earth and go for nature, but you don't have to, okay? There's a lot of other things that are really good. Obviously, just going a generalized bless on the Katsina is going to give them a lot of different options. Not really going a bless, just going a very basic bless and jumping into Earth and nature and get you, again, poison resistance to defend yourself there, magic resistance to defend yourself there, or even going something like Arcane Finesse to get penetration for your Chocoan Star Priests can be good, right? There's a lot of different options, but at the end of the day, so I did a lot of, I say a lot. I did like 2 days, 2 like 3-hour sessions of testing. Unfortunately, I only did 2 3-hour sessions of like expansion testing, and I didn't do a lot of post-expansion testing. I would change things. I would have changed what I ended up doing had I done more post-expansion testing. But I did a lot of testing, and I'll show you some of the things that I ended up actually testing, okay? So we've got Chaco 1, 2, and 3 that we're going to show off. And these are 2 monoliths and a, what's that? That's a Coyote Shaman. Gotcha. So first one is kind of the scales kind of option, right? So the idea of relying on Chaco, relying on their Katsina warriors, who are okay out of the box, but very expensive. They don't need a crazy bless to really get going, but they do benefit from some kind of a bless, especially once you start going up against players, right? Against indies, the no bless is still kind of okay, right? The monolith gets you access to Earth and nature, which is kind of what you want out of the box, right? And then it also gets you access to Astral, which can be very useful, again, primarily for your Chocoan Star Priests. So this build is more focused on the concept of having a reasonable expansion. this will not, note, this will not get you a 20 province expansion. This will get you a 12 to 15 province expansion, depending on how aggressive your neighbors are. If you have really aggressive neighbors, it might only get you like a 10 province expansion. But the point of this is that you have super cheap mages, and you're going to make a lot of money here, and you're going to be able to shovel out star priests and get a shit ton of research, especially since, well, this guy's imprisoned. So you'll get a shit ton of research off of them, which should be able to get you to, you know, soul slay communions and things like that to really, like, fuck with people. And then when this guy eventually comes out in the mid-game, you should have a fat pile of Katsina and maybe some ogres and things like that that you can deal with that get fire and shock resistance and that get Berserker. Now again, Berserker is somewhat of a double-edged sword because you have so many sacreds as mages, but generally speaking, as long as you're not getting screwed over by battlefield wipes, you should be mostly okay to do those types of things. So, you know. It happens. Put resistance gear on your fucking communion masters and you'll be fine. So, whatever. So this is an interesting thing that I played around with. Here's the deal though. Over and over and over again trying to do this or something like this, right? Because I tried a couple of different options. It is very dicey what type of expansion you're actually going to get. Because at the end of the day, your expansion, even with Katsina warriors, if they do not have a bless, is not great. Your warriors will do fine, but your commanders will get the shit killed out of them. So typically the best option is turn 1, you profit a Kikmongwi, right? And you get like a Choco and Sun Priest or a Star Priest, right? And then you get as many Katsina warriors as you can. Probably for... Yeah, no, probably 4. Actually, maybe just 3, because you start off with so little money. Yeah, it might be 4. So that gives you... you start off with a super shitty army, right, of like Addle warriors and like some archers. So that's going to give you 4 Katsinas that you can bless, stick way in the fucking front, and hope on turn 2 you can actually expand into something nearby. And then basically the best thing you can do from there on is just keep doing Hmong Katsinas and Katsina warriors, right? And the reason why, you can do a mix of other things, sure, but the reason why is basically you don't want to just do Star Priest or Sun Priest, because those are they're gonna get killed, right? Even with 6 to 8 Katsina warriors in front of them, if you run into a big indie province, that indie province, you're gonna get something that wraps around or something that shoots you in the head. And then you've just lost that expansion party. So it's really unreliable and it's very slow. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. So that's the downside of that situation. Next up, Chaco 2. This is another thing that I tested pretty extensively, and that is the Rainbow Mage, right? This is an imprisoned rainbow, no incarnates kind of bless. This does better. This is a very kind of neutral scales scenario, heavily focused on growth and heavily focused on magic. Again, to try to make sure that you expand decently well and benefit greatly from the fact that you have a lot of cheap mages that you can research a whole bunch with, right? This is a very generic bless. It gets you all the, fire and shock resistance, some defense. It gets you a couple of survivals, mountain and forest, which are actually pretty nice because you don't have great movement options with your sacreds. Your Wuyas, your Katsina, etc. They don't have great movement. So it actually helps. Strength of Earth, Strength of Flesh gets you some additional punching damage, which is always nice. Some major magic resistance just cuz. Poison resistance, again, just cuz. Undying, because this absolutely is not a death nation, and if you need undead command than undead leadership, then you're probably summoning undead leaders anyway, so it really doesn't matter for you. So Undying just gives your people a little extra oomph in some of the battles that you do. I had mixed results with this. This was okay. Here's part of the issue that we run into. One, because of the situation, we have no, because of the setup that we take, we have no order, and we have it's like 39 resource points per Katsina. So no order when you're relying on Katsinas is really hard. It actually hurts a lot. So that is an issue. The other issue is that, again, even though we had a good defensive bless, our Katsinas would do just fine, but expansion was still really slow because it was every other turn for an expansion party versus a nation like an elf nation or just a good like protection nation like like Ulm or something like that, or a heavy blessed nation like Mictlan or something like that. Those guys are, here's an expansion party every turn, basically, right? That we're gonna throw out. Whereas this is kind of like, you could throw out an expansion party every turn, but it's going to be led by a Sun Priest, and that Sun Priest is invariably going to get killed, right? So the only way to keep it secure is to do it with like a Wuya, super expensive, not going to work, or a Monkatsina, still quite expensive, but is reliable, but is slow to recruit. So you're going to get into that situation of like every other turn, you'll be able to send out a new expansion party, and you end up getting to where like you're at 12 to 15 provinces when you're kind of like finishing up, depending on, of course, this always depends on where you end up, right? You could get really lucky and get a wide open space and get plenty of time to expand, and then this would be an amazing build. That would be super great. Get you all of the paths that you need to progress into the game, get you all of that kind of like path access that you don't have as Chaco. So this can work. This absolutely can work. It's just dicey. But honestly, I think this would be one of the ones that I would legitimately give a go in an actual game. I might do something like decrease the misfortune or decrease some heat or cold to get some more order, right? That is definitely an option. Maybe even doing that and going into some more Dominion would be a good choice as well. So this has a little bit of flexibility to do some stuff. I mean, it's a generic rainbow build. It has the flexibility to do what generic rainbow builds always do, right? I could see this working, but against aggressive opponents, it's gonna be hard. Yeah. Pretty much that's it. And then we have Chaco 3. So this is more of an aggressive bless. This is an awake pretender, an awake monolith. And it gets fortitude, regeneration, and fate weaving on your people. It has garbage stats. The only thing we take is some good dominion, some good order, and some good growth, right? Shitty fortune, that's really gonna suck, and the drain is really gonna suck. This is gonna put our star priests, which are the ones that we're gonna mass the most, this is gonna put them at 4 research per turn, which is really, really bad. However, I tried this quite a bit, and basically, our Katsinas were gods, pretty much. They would take very little damage. When they did get damaged, they would regen that damage. And after getting hit, the fate weaving would kick in, and it was legitimately just this scenario of like, all right, well, these guys are god kings now. It's pretty strong, and it doesn't give you a lot of path access, but it does get you high astral, super high earth, and super high nature, and it gets you, it helps defeat the issue of having really crappy research in the beginning of the game by getting you someone that has 45 research out of the gate that's not going to be doing anything else at the early game but researching. So it works, right? It doesn't have great expansion, though. Again, it still boils down to that scenario of your units are your reliable units, your Katsinas, are fucking expensive, right? They are crazy expensive, and because of that, whether you're going scales and noblesse, whether you're going medium, rainbow with a decent bless, or whether you're going something like this that's kind of a heavy bless, right? Every single time I've tried this, the issue is that it's just hard in the first like 5 to 10 turns of the game to get enough Katsinas, to get enough expansion parties, because they're so expensive, and because you have to worry about your leaders either getting killed or being slow to recruit. Because your slow to recruit ones, like if you get a Mon Katsina with a Fortitude Fate Weaving regeneration, he ain't gonna die to Indies, but you can only get one every other turn. And that means you're delayed each time. You're basically half the amount of expansion parties comparatively, and it's really expensive. And with these crap scales, right, like having really expensive stuff is hard to produce. So it's a really mixed bag. I think this could work. I know this can get you about 15 provinces in expansion, depending on your luck. And I know that this can get you about 15 provinces for expansion, depending on your luck. This rarely worked. This almost always got me lower than 15, and was really hard. There was a lot of attrition, right? Obviously, like, really good scales, sure, but I don't think I would make it into the mid-game with this example, Monolith, right? I might make it into the mid-game with this one or this one. But here's the thing. There's a 74-person game, a really cool map. I really wanted to make it into the mid-game. I don't know about wanting to make it into the late game, because that's hell. But I did not want to be one of the first people out of the game. So I decided to go something else. I also had a different idea for something that I wanted to try, something that I haven't tried in a multiplayer game before. So we actually ended up going with Yona, the Great Bear. Aha! So this is the pretender that we ended up taking. And right out of the gate, we can see the reason why we took an Awake Expander is because what have we been having issues with, right? Is reliable expansion. Every single time, the big problem, the big issue is reliable expansion. Can I actually expand and keep things under me, right? And the Great Bear basically solves that problem for us, right? We don't have to sit around and worry, can I afford Katsinas? We don't have to sit around and worry, do I risk it with a Sun Priest, or do I go the secure route with a Mon Katsina, right? And take the additional time? The Great Bear solves that for us. We go, hey, Great Bear, is that in your dominion? And Great Bear goes, yeah, it is. And then we go, okay, it's yours. Yeah. Because this motherfucker's not dying to... I say that. I tested quite a bit with this, and he died once. When I attacked a throne, and that throne had multiple fire... No, it wasn't fire. It was water. Had multiple water mages that cast a bunch of water elementals, and basically the water elementals just beat the shit out of me. So the Great Bear, so don't attack thrones and you'll be okay, right? And even then, you could probably attack some thrones, just scout them first. So this guy regenerates a crazy amount. He has built-in Temper Flesh, so he takes super low damage anyways. He has decently high protection because of the high earth magic, and he goes Berserk at Berserker 7, so this goes even higher. It's very strong. And then he actually has Fear, so he's great. He's fantastic. He's got disease resistance 100, so he cannot be diseased, and he's got affliction resistance, so it's very rare that he actually gets an affliction, and when he does, he has recuperation, so he can get rid of it. This guy is super tank. He solves all of your expansion woes. But, dear Lord Jesus, to get to this, we have to take shit scales. Also, what the fuck is up with this attack skill? Okay, so here's the deal. Fire is actually really important for Chaco. Fire gets us a lot of different options. It gets us things like, it gets us a lot of access to... My mind's blanking. It gets us access to some of our national skills, not individually on its own. Well, I guess actually there are a couple that it gets on its own. Yeah, so just straight fire gets us contact coyote, but then we need fire air for Yayapansas, and we need fire death for Masawus, etc. But regardless, fire is still relatively important for Chaco to get into. But also, and this is kind of the thing that I was going for, I wanted to go repel builds. When looking at Chaco, and we'll jump back and actually take a look at Chaco real quick. When looking at Chaco, I was like, maybe I could make a really cool repel scenario. So I started looking at it and I'm like, okay, these guys have death power, right? So they're actually attack skill 13 in growth 3. Which most people are going to be. Okay? If I took a good bless, like an attack boost bless, these guys could be base 17, right? Putting something like a, like a Ring of the Warrior or a Burning Pearl, right, boosts them over 20. And as soon as you start boosting over 20, you start getting into that decently reliable repel skill versus certain enemy types, basically versus other, human enemies, right? If you're up against undead, then that's less of an issue, or less of a thing. You're up against demons, that's less of a thing, because their morale makes it very hard to repel. And then, of course, like, if you're up against people who have long weapons, then it's an issue as well then. But we do have access to earth and air with our Bozmos2, right? So we could actually make stone birds. We got to get a little lucky, but we can make stone birds. And then stone birds are length 5, right? And then if we focus on other things, right? We've got a built-in vine shield. So a built-in vine shield with high attack skill, getting us good repels, and being able to kind of like being able to mix and match our gear to the appropriate situation, right? Not having to worry about needing a vine shield, so being able to use 2 weapons, or being able to use a weapon and a different shield, or being able, and this, I love this, right? Being able to use a 2-handed weapon, but with the ability of having the safety net of a vine shield, right? There's a lot that we can do with a high attack skill built-in vine shield scenario. And this works for both the Wuyas and for the Hmong Katsinas, as well as a lot of our sacreds, right? Like, we take a look at our Katsina warriors. These guys have 12 base attack, and they have a length 3 war spear. That is longer than a good amount of enemies are going to have, right? Which means that these guys actually repel a fair amount. Add on, well, I mean, they could repel a fair amount, but they don't have high enough attack skill really to do that. So you add in some attack skill, and all of a sudden, they actually repel a fair amount. And it's really cool. Repel on top of the Vine Shield, on top of Temper Flesh and Regeneration, makes these guys really hard to deal with for conventional means, right? And maximize that when you're dealing with like a Hmong Katsina and a Wuya. So here's the thing though, like we can get regeneration, we can get Temper Flesh, right? Like, why do we care about that? Sure, yes, absolutely. But regeneration takes a long time to get to from a mass perspective, right? And temper flesh, I don't think there is a mass temper flesh, right? So being able to say, all right, all our sacreds have temper flesh and regeneration in an instant, plus the attack skill and everything like that, is something that I think is really cool, basically. So that's the general concept that we're going for here. We can, if we take a look at like the bear, right? The bear has base 13 attack skill, right? With the 2 attack skill buff, that goes up to 17. If he has a burning pearl, that goes up to 21. And then Berserker gives him another 7 when he goes Berserk, so that's 28 attack skill. Then you throw in, he's going to get plus attack skill from every pip. I actually have a Great Bear that's over 30 attack skill, and I have a Stone Bird on him, because obviously he can't repel with his Bite and Claw. But I have a Stone Bird on him, and he repels almost everything. Like, it's very rare that he gets hit. To the point of fact, actually, so he does great against most things. Undead is where the challenge comes in, right? He's not quite there yet, but he almost does it to undead as well. He almost can repel the undead. And that's pretty extreme. This guy is pretty good, pretty strong at dealing with those types of things. So I think it's a really fun, interesting build. I'm gonna caveat that and say, I don't think I would do this build again. There are a bunch of things that I have found out since then, that things, they work, it works, it's effective, but it's not as good as you would want, right? These scales are too bad for what Choco wants to do. Choco really, really needs to not take Drain. It can work, but it's really hard to deal with. Especially, like, it's one thing if you have a Monolith Awakened dealing with that scenario by researching, but if you have a Awake Expander, you're not researching with them, you're expanding. So this build consistently goes above 20 provinces, but has shit scales. So you have to capitalize on the amount of expansion that you have and the aggressive bless that you have. I say aggressive, this is mostly defensive, honestly. But it's a fierce bless, right? You have to capitalize on that and use it to gather forward momentum. Otherwise, you will stall and crap out, is what I have found. So it's an interesting build, but I do not think I would go this route again. I think that Chaco is probably not the best repel nation, but I hadn't done a repel build before, and I wanted to give it a try, and it works. Don't get me wrong, like it works on Chaco, but I think you have to put too much into it for it to work, and we could be doing other stuff better, right? Basically. So yeah. So that's it. That's Yunad, that's the Great Bear, that's a bunch of different things that we have done with our testing and our builds and Chaco in general. I'm recording this after the fact, so I've been playing the game for a little while now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it, but I'm learning a lot of things as I do at every nation, right? Every nation I make, I go into it and I'm like, hey, let's try this thing. And I immediately like start playing the game and I'm like, oh, okay. I start learning some things and I'm like, all right, I would do this differently next time. That being said, I don't know what I would do next time as like an actual different build. So I thought about this, of the concept of like, hey, let's build a different one. But really, you know, I think I might actually go back to the Great Bear And I might expand again with the Great Bear, just with a less aggressive bless, right? For example, I think the Great Bear expands just fine, just having regeneration. We want Earth so that we can take advantage of the Earth thing, the Earth bless there. I think Fortitude is probably worth it. Truth be told, getting it automatically on all of your sacred units. So I might do this, but I probably wouldn't do the attack skill fire magic, right? I would just, to get to where I wanted to on fire in the game, I would just boost up a Sun Priest, or hope I got lucky on some thrones or things like that. That's another thing. Actually, we didn't talk about that at all. Oh my god. The other thing that I was really interested in with Chaco is this is a massive game, which means there's a shit ton of thrones. So I'm really hopeful, right, that we get a couple of good thrones that go well with our sacreds, right? But that's a crapshoot. We can't rely on that. But I would absolutely do something more along these lines, right? We can pretty much tank productivity. We do need some Dominion growth, obviously. And then I think it's a matter of like trying to. You probably have to tank cold scales, which I hate, by the way. I hate cold scales on this nation. I hate cold scales on this nation. And then it's really kind of difficult. Like, you could take Misfortune 1. I've had shitty luck with Misfortune, so I really don't like the idea of it. But I feel like you could do this and have much better scales. And honestly, like, the attack skill is nice, but it's not worth it. Like, this would do way better overall. I say that, like, there again, I say it works. The repel attack skill Chaco scenario works. It does. I've seen it work multiple times already. But other things work just as well, honestly. And I think this would probably have a better, if only for the fact that you wouldn't have shitty research, I think this would have a better run in a game like Bozmos2. So, anyways, that's it. That's the Pretender design. Well, that's not the Pretender design. We'll go back to the actual one that we're using. This is the Pretender design, and it's a fun build. I'm having a good time with it, and I hope you enjoy. We'll see you in the game. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.